Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second breakout session, How to Get Your Resume Noticed. My name's John Monroe, and I'm the Director of Content at GovLoop. And for this session, I'm also your moderator. Thanks so much for joining us. All right, let's get to it. You know, we all know how stressful a job search can be. And one of the toughest parts of getting a job is just getting noticed. And that's why the resume is so important. If you don't have a good resume, you may not even get considered. And I got to say, this session speaks to me because I haven't done a resume for like, I don't know, 5 years. And I'm pretty sure if I looked at my resume now, I would cringe. So that's what this session is about today, is how to make a resume that sings. So, but before we get to that good content, I do have some housekeeping reminders to cover. First, if you're on X, formerly known as Twitter, we'd love to hear what you're learning. Please use the hashtag NextGenGov to share your takeaways. We have some great resources available for you to download from the console. You can find those in the resource module. So that will include this slide deck. So be sure to check that out. Now, we hope you don't have any technical difficulties, but we know that happens. If that does happen, just post a message in the Q&A tab, and my colleague Andrew will help you out. And in that same Q&A portal, as the name suggests, you can submit questions to our expert. And please feel free to drop questions in there at any time during the session. You know, as they come to mind, we'll tackle them towards the end, but don't wait till the end. Also, we have an open chat available for you today. So this is where you can actually interact with other people listening to the session. It's a lot of fun. It really adds depth to the session. So please don't be shy. And, you know, if you get pulled away from the session for any reason, don't sweat it. Tomorrow, we're going to email you a link to the entire event so that you can catch up on anything you missed. All right, now we are also giving away 1 CPE credit for participation in today's session, but there's 3 things you need to do. First, stay and participate in the entire session. You're going to want to do that anyway, so I don't know why I mentioned it. But second, take all the polls. And so each time the question comes up, it'll be in the slide window, so you just select your response, click submit, easy peasy. And third, fill out the post-event CPE evaluation form to obtain your credit. You can find the CPE evaluation form in the resource module of this console, or you can find it in the resource center of the main environment. And all CPEs will be emailed directly to you once we've, taken care of all the paperwork. All right, now with all that housekeeping out of the way, let me introduce you to our speaker. Joining us today is Alexandria Knight. Alex is the founder of Knight Career Consulting. Thanks so much for being here, Alex. So glad to have you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm really excited to get started.
All right, well, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, welcome everybody. Good afternoon again. This is the How to Get Your Resume Noticed breakout session. Today, we're going to go over some effective resume writing skills for you guys. Again, my name is Alexandria Knight. I'm a career consultant and founder of Knight Career Consulting, and I'm here today to teach you how to optimize your resume for your ideal position. So a quick agenda for what we're going over today. I'm going to introduce myself and my background. We're going to start with some basic resume tips. We're going to get into the meat of the resume with some basic and universal do's and don'ts. And then we're really going to deep dive into how to optimize that resume for your ideal position. And then we've saved some time at the end for some questions and discussion. Again, my name is Alexandria Knight. You can call me Alex. I am a career consultant, but I'm also a longtime federal employee. That's how I got into this, actually. Being a federal employee has been very fulfilling. I've worked with and for several federal agencies, including the Social Security Administration, the U.S. Army, the Veterans Administration as well. And I've just found that work to be so fulfilling. I've also found it very difficult to secure, right? And a lot of that goes to the resume writing and how to tailor the resume for a position. And so, although today we're going over just a basic kind of universal resume, something that you can use for the private sector, these are also tools and skills that you would need for a federal resume as well. And so let's get into those basic resume writing tips. So your resume should tell the story of your professional development. Of course, you want to make that story as concise as possible, but you want to make it easy for the hiring manager to see that not only are you a qualified candidate, but they can see you in the position. That is the purpose of your resume. Um, a lot of people a lot of people, especially nowadays, have the misconception that hiring managers are not real people. They're AI or computers, but I can assure you they are real people, and every person loves a good story. And so if you can make your resume sound like a good story, and again, make it easy for them to match up, because again, these are real people. These are not mind readers. They aren't scanning your resume for keywords. They are making sure that they are reading your resume to see if you are the right fit for the job. And so they're not mind readers. You have to convey that story. So how do you do that, right? The first and foremost thing is clear and easy to read formatting. Again, going back to the misconception that hiring managers nowadays are AI and computers, again, they are not. And in the job market today, hiring managers are getting hundreds, sometimes thousands of application packets, right? And so another misconception is that your resume should only be a page, at most 2 pages, right? And so you're trying to fit all this information into those pages, and you've condensed down. You don't have any visible lines, any clear sections, and that makes it really difficult to read. And I'm going to be honest with you, a hiring manager is just not going to read it. They're not going to waste their time, and they're not going to charge it to their eye doctor to go to the doctor after they've been trying to read these resumes for hours, right? And so that clear, easy to read formatting is key. Tailoring your resume to the position is the next key thing. Again, the hiring manager wants to see their future employee. And so if you aren't tailoring your resume to the position, and we'll get into how you do that later, they aren't seeing that employee. They're seeing someone who may be qualified for some position, but how do they qualify for my position, right? So that the key is to answer that question. And going back to resume length and tailoring the resume to the position is including relevant experience. Again, let's throw away the misconception that your resume has to be a page. This day and age, everything is on a computer, so it really doesn't matter how long the resume is. I mean, you don't want it to be 10 pages, but resumes being a page go back to the times where people were printing out documents and not wanting to print out 5-10 pages of a resume. Nowadays, again, everything is on the computer. And so if your resume takes up 3 to 5 pages, that's actually great, especially if you're including relevant experience on there, because that means you have 3 to 5 pages of, hey, look at me, I match all these qualifications, right? And so making sure that you include that resume, that relevant experience, but you don't have to go back 10 plus years. And that's another, like I said, we aren't talking about federal resumes, but I know a big misconception with federal resumes is that you have to include like your first job from high school on. You do not. You only need to include that relevant experience, and however many pages that takes up is how many pages it takes up, right? And in order to tailor your resume to the position, and making sure that you're including that relevant experience, you want to utilize action verbs. And going back to making your resume a story, you want to utilize examples. So not just what you did on the job, but how it benefited not only your professional development, but how it benefited the company that you work for. So if you have, and we'll talk about some examples later as well, but if one of your qualifications is good oral communication, it's not just enough to say you have good oral communication. First off, how did you present that good oral communication? Was it from presentations? Was it from routine phone calls? What exactly did you do to present that good oral communication? And then what did that routine persistent good oral communication results in, not only again for you, but for the company. And a controversial, I would say, basic resume tip is including references. I personally, if I will say this, an appropriate reference can honestly sometimes be your make or break. If we think about the resume in the sense of you again are aligning yourself to the position, if you have aligned yourself to the position throughout your resume, and then you put some icing on a cake of, oh, by the way, I know someone who works for the company, and so I have already an inner workings, a knowledge of the company's inner workings, that is going to look good. That they may not even contact that reference. But again, going back to federal agencies, if you're applying for a job at FEMA and one of your references has an @FEMA email, that's going to look good more than it would look bad, right? And so including appropriate references is really key, because again, it goes back to tailoring to the position and again, reiterating appropriate, right? So if they work for the company or if they have contracts with the company, if there's someone who has an intimate knowledge of how the company or the industry works, then you also have an intimate knowledge because you are you have that person as a reference. And then the most important thing I'm telling you guys is to proofread. You can have all this tied up, wrapped nice and up with a bow on top, but if they open it and it's riddled with errors, it's riddled with poor formatting, it's not going to do you or the hiring manager any good, because again, these people are getting so many resumes nowadays and they're not going to waste their time. It's just going to get tossed, right? And so make sure that it's concise, it's legible, and that it's accurate. So going back to that length of a resume, I know me personally, I go back about 5 to 7 years on my resume, but typically how far back do you go on your resume?
Yeah, so if everyone could please go ahead and select what you think works best. And I got to say, the last time I did my resume 5 years ago, I had to think about this because, I've been around for a little while. And, it's hard to even think about those early jobs and their relevance to anything. How do you decide talk about the relevance piece of this, because some of our early jobs may be more relevant than others, or it's just too early.
Okay, so and I was gonna bring that up a little bit more later, but
okay,
definitely,
well.
we can talk about it now. If it is relevant, because for instance, I know a lot of teachers nowadays are pivoting to project management, and a lot of times, if our position title does not match the position title in which that we're applying for, we don't really think about how it could be relevant, right? And so if you have positions that you worked way 10 years ago, that the duties, when you think about it, I'll put it this way. So when you're reading a job advertisement, something's going off in your head. Oh, I can do that. Oh, I can do that. Oh, I can do that. If what's going off in your head of, oh, I can do that, is an experience you had from 10 years ago, put that on your resume. Because again, the hiring manager needs to know that thought process that you're going through of, oh, I qualify for this job, so they can also come to that same conclusion, right? But
Excellent.
We will discuss that more later.
Okay, great. And I do want to mention one thing. As an editor, I'm not a good copy editor. I'm more, kind of a substantive editor. But a great tip is, if you have a document, you need to proofread it, read it aloud. Especially, yes. Or read it aloud to someone, because you're going to catch things when you read it aloud. Mm-hmm. So anyway, all right, let's see what people said. 7+ years. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, if the relevant experience goes back 7+ years, then go back 7+ years. But again, make sure that it's relevant experience. And if that leads to some gaps in your in your resume, and we're gonna talk about that next. That's what a cover letter is for, right? And so
Excellent.
so let's get into that. So speaking of
Oh,
cover letters, do any of y'all include cover letters in your application packet?
yeah. So this is if everyone could please let us know what you do. And I know this is a topic of much debate,
It,
because
it is.
because cover letters, those are tricky,
It,
because
yeah, they really can be, because what do you put in there? I know me personally, and we'll get into this in the next slide. But I recommend it when you have gaps in your resume, or for young professionals who are just getting started and they may not have the um, direct match of experiences, right? And so it really can convey, hey, yes, I don't have this training, I don't have this particular qualification, but I'm a quick learner. And then what you want to put in your cover letter is experiences, references back to that. Because again, you never want to put anything in your cover letter or your resume that you can't link back to. So you never want to put um, good oral communication. You never want to put just quick learner. You want to put how you accomplish that. So an example for the quick learning for a young professional could be something along the lines of secured a 4-year degree in 3 years. You see what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
so you want to showcase how you are a quick learner.
Okay, great. All right, let's see what people said here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of a pretty even spread there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
honestly, I'm surprised by how many said absolutely each time, because again, it is very controversial. Me personally, absolutely each time, because again, and I'm going to go ahead and advance to the next slide.
okay.
Uh, uh, More times than likely, the hiring manager, if you include the cover letter, they're going to read it. And nowadays, again, going back to how many resumes that hiring managers are receiving, a lot of these resumes too are almost copy paste. One, because a lot of people have gotten into their heads the misconception that it's AI or some kind of computer system that's reading the resume, and so they have to match these keywords, and so they're pretty much almost just spewing back what the advertisement says in their resume. And so, that gets very redundant. And so you can really stand out with a cover letter, because what happens is there will be whatever candidates get called for an interview are going to be qualified, right? So what is going to make you stand out? And a lot of times that's your personality, is how do you fit with the team? Because again, everybody who got called for that interview more than likely is qualified. They probably have the education, they have the work experience, they have the training, but what is going to get them or you that job? And nowadays, a lot of companies, agencies are keying in on culture, or setting up a culture and a reputation of what their company is, who their people are, how they treat their people, how they treat their customers. And so you can't really convey that in a resume. The best place to convey that is a cover letter. The key to my cover letters that I like to do, again, I like to focus on federal employment, is looking at the mission statement of the agency and aligning my cover letter to that mission statement. And that also helps me as well as someone applying for a job, because I can determine, oh, I actually do align with this agency's mission statement. Like, I really do care about the environment, and I really do think, the environmental protection laws should be enforced, and I want to be a part of that. And so I am going to apply for the EPA. Or it may be totally different. You may look at the mission statement of an agency, and you're like, you know what, I don't really vibe with it. I don't really think I like that. And so before you even apply for the position, kind of what you're getting into, because again, every company, every agency has a mission statement. And so you can look and see if you align with it. And again, that'll help you as a job seeker, and that'll help the hiring manager. So let's get into some resume do's and don'ts. So I think we've talked about, tailoring resumes, whether or not to include a cover letter, how far do you go back? And so I think we've kind of hammered in each resume is going to be different. Even your resume for different positions is going to be a little different each time, right? But there are some basic and universal do's and don'ts to include and not to include. So let's go over those. So do number one, and I think I'm hammering this into you guys, but I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to tailor your resume to the position description. And again, we'll get into how you do that in the optimization segment. But again, the hiring managers are not mind readers, and they are getting resumes that say the same thing over and over and over again. Because again, most people who are applying probably meet the qualifications. So if the position description says that you need a master's degree to do this position, everybody who applies more than likely is going to hold a master's degree. So what is going to set you apart? So you have to tailor your resume to that position description. And again, going back to what I just said about kind of the mission statement, you want to look at what that company, how that company operates in your industry. And so if you're an IT person, for example, are you going into cybersecurity? So do you need to tailor your resume more on software installation and security? Do you need to tailor your resume more to security measures, or is the company IT services more so customer service related, where customers are calling in and you have to help them? And so your cybersecurity that background may not matter as much as just your basic keeping up with customer complaints, being able to resolve customer complaints. So you want to, again, tailor your resume to the position description and to the company and how they operate in the industry. Again, you want to document all relevant experience. So this goes back to, you may not think about just because your position title and that job that you held in college is not the exact position title of what you're going for now. Some of those duties that you did, because again, when you read that job announcement, there's something that went off in your head that, oh, I can do this. Oh, I have experience in this. What position or what training, what volunteer experience, what experience triggered in your mind when you read good oral communication in the job announcement, right? So you want to document all that relevant experience and make sure that it's in a clear, defined section. A big don't, the biggest don't forget to proofread. I'm telling you guys, because I've seen so many resumes that look really good, and then you get in and you're like, hold on, did you actually really look at this? And as a hiring manager, it makes you kind of second guess the application, because, as a hiring manager, you take time to put out a good job description and definitely take time to read the resumes and go through all the application packets. And so you want to hire someone who takes time to look at their resume. Another aspect of don't forget to proofread is, let's be honest, a lot of us nowadays are probably using AI, ChatGPT to not, of course, not write our resumes or anything like that, but maybe to enhance them and things such as that. And so we know by experience that sometimes ChatGPT can be wrong. And so never just copy paste anything from ChatGPT, because I've seen that as well. And it's like, this doesn't even make sense, right? Especially when your tasks are very specialized, it's not going to make sense. So again, just don't forget to proofread. Another big don't that I really, really want to highlight this time of year, and it's very unfortunate, but don't use any personal identifiers. One, the hiring manager doesn't need them. Two, I don't know if you guys know, but job seekers are one of the most targeted groups when it comes to scams and identity theft. Because you think about it, on your resume, if it's done right, you have every job you've ever held, you have every school you've ever went to. Some people, and this is where I get into the personal identifiers, some people will have their date of birth, they'll have their home address, some people will even have their social security numbers, some people will have pictures. And so it's a one-stop shop for you, right? And unfortunately, nowadays, people are posting fake jobs in order to harvest these resumes in order to scam people, right? And so just avoid that by, one, thoroughly reading the job announcement, because again, going back to one, protecting yourself of making sure that this is a real job, and two, this is a company that you want to work for. Thoroughly reading that job announcement, and two, to even avoid the possibility of that, even if it's a real job announcement, to just eliminate any of those personal identifiers. That also goes for when you're sending your resume to a resume writer. I tell my clients all the time, scrub all your personal information out of your resume. I don't need your home address. I don't need that in I don't need your date of birth. I don't need a photo. I don't need any of that information, right? And the hiring manager will be the same. All they need is a city and state, an email, and a phone number. Okay, so try to avoid using those personal identifiers. And again, just emphasizing that, just be mindful. We're about to get into thoroughly reading the job announcement. And so that's one way you can be mindful, because a job announcement should have certain details in it, and it can be a red flag if it doesn't have some of these details that we're about to go into. So just a quick check. What is the number one resume don't? Number one resume don't. Should we not waste our time?
I hope everyone has gotten the message by now.
I hope so, right?
No, that's really interesting. All right. Yeah. So what do you guys think? What do you think is the number one don't? Yeah, I got to tell you, that proofreading is really tough, because some people have a good eye, some of us don't. There's a natural tendency to kind of correct mistakes, in our head.
Right.
That we see on paper. So.
And I'll say, just referencing back to just the real world, a lot of us, especially when we're job seeking, we may be pumping out several resumes a day, right?
Yeah.
And so it can get very cumbersome, but take the time to, and what I like to do is I like to read a document early in the morning and late in the evening. Like, I like to read it at different times of the day, because our brains kind of, some people are early birds and some people are night owls. And so if you can, read it under both of those influences, I think you can hit anything you may have missed.
All right, let's see what people said.
Yay.
Yeah. There you go.
All right, well, let's keep going. So let's really get into the meat of this, right? I'm excited about this section because I think this is really, what you guys came for, like how to get your resume noticed, right? And so the way you do that is to optimize your resume to a position. So again, hammering in the tailoring your resume to a job advertisement. You need to thoroughly read the advertisement. I mean, that is the key there. And what you're looking for in that advertisement is not only what are the duties, but what are the qualifications. And those two sections will outline what your resume should look like. Your resume should match all the duties and all the qualifications. And if it doesn't, you should supplement it with a cover letter to explain how you plan to fill in those gaps, right? And so also what thoroughly reading that job advertisement will do for you is it'll help you really understand if this is a job that you should be going for. Because when you read that advertisement and you go through and you look at the duties and you look at the qualifications and you may even write them out or type them out while you're reading through the job advertisement. But if you don't align with the majority of those duties and qualifications, you may not need to apply for the job right now. But you could also use that as more or less of a vision board or a plan of action, really, of what you need to do so that you can apply for that position in the future. Another benefit of thoroughly reading the job advertisement is going back to what we said before about scams, right? And so a lot of scam advertisements will only list a title, some vague duties, probably no qualifications, right? And that's pretty much it. And so another way for you to assess, for you to weed out those false job advertisements is to see if they've put in the detail. And even if it's not a scam, let's be honest, us as job seekers, we want to make sure we're working for a reputable company. And if they can't take the time to thoroughly and adequately describe the position, the candidate that they're looking for, the employee that they're looking for, and what exactly this position entails, then why waste your time applying? Because you just how hiring managers don't have a crystal ball and aren't mind readers, neither are you. So if they don't tell you what they're looking for, how can you align your resume to be that, right? So let's get into some examples. So I love this good oral communication because I see it on almost every job announcement. And so I wanted to use that as an example. And so the advertisement may say candidate must have good oral communication. And so that's a qualification, right? Candidate must have proficiency in Microsoft Word. Candidate must have 3 years of a secondary degree, things. So though, whenever it says something such as that, that's a qualification. And that again is something you must have. It's not like a duty that you're going to be doing. That is just a skill set or a trait that they're looking for. And how do you present that in your resume? And so good oral communication. A lot of people, unfortunately, will just regurgitate this. They will say good oral communication. They will have a skill section and they will say good oral communication. How am I as a hiring manager to know that you actually have good oral communication? How did you communicate? And so I've given some examples here of how you should phrase this. And so both of these examples give how you communicated and what the result of that communication was, right? And so that's really the important part. And so in this first example, communicated with various internal teams to address and resolve client concerns in a timely and efficient manner. Okay. The second the second thing here is presents organized and concise analyses to clients, resulting in repeat customers. And you see here how in both of these, we're saying who we communicated with, how we communicated, and what that communication resulted in. I want to point out, though, how important that proofreading is. Do y'all see what I see in here? Efficient is misspelled. And see, like you were saying, like a lot of times you probably wouldn't catch that because your brain autocorrects as it is, right? And so it's not really catching that E should be an I, but just go back. Like John said, read it out loud. Like that's a big help to read it out loud because your brain is not only registering the words but the sounds as well. And so it'll see that, oh, that's not supposed to be that sound. So let's change that, right? So going to the next one. So this is a duties example. So if the and I'm emphasize on IT because I know that's like just a hot industry right now. So if the job says evaluate the adequacy of and recommend new or revised IT security policies, standards, and procedures, how do you how do you convey that other than kind of regurgitating this back to them, right? Again, you want to say how you do this and what that resulted in. Sometimes you can also, how I have here, this example, the second example here is actually just a training, an accredited training that the candidate took in order to showcase that they had advanced knowledge of different cybersecurity procedures, right? And that can answer the mail for this one. You can also answer the mail with this first sentence here: research recommended and implemented two-factor authentication resulting in significant decrease in identity theft, right? And so again, emphasizing what you did, how you did it, and what it resulted in. So we're gonna go over what you need as a summary, what you need on that resume, right? And so a bold full name, that is paramount. You also want to include your name as a footer on the bottom of your resume, especially if you have multiple pages, because you want to make sure it doesn't get lost or separated or anything like that. If there are any kind of conversion issues that hiring manager can be aware of, say for instance, if you have a 3-page resume and you have at the bottom of the resume your full bolded name and page 1 of 3, and for whatever reason only page 1 gets through to the hiring manager, they then know to contact you and say, hey, I didn't get the rest of your resume. And so you want to just cover yourself to make sure that if there are any issues, that the hiring manager is aware that wasn't how that was supposed to be. Another thing that I want to emphasize, bringing up conversion issues, is I always recommend that you send or upload your resume as a PDF. And that again is to avoid any of those conversion issues. I know we aren't talking about federal jobs today, but I know a lot of people like to use the USA Jobs Resume Builder for federal resumes. And it's a great tool, but do not upload that resume directly from USA Jobs because it gets jumbled. So unfortunately, some federal agencies, it doesn't even come through as a Word document. It comes through as like rich text. And so be very, very mindful of when you're uploading your resumes, whether they be federal or private sector, into whatever company, however means that you're transmitting the resume, that there can and will be conversion issues. So just to avoid that, make sure it's properly formatted in a Word document, and then convert that to a PDF and then upload. And again, if you are emailing, you want to properly label all attachments and define those in the body of the email. Accurate contact info. It should be self-explanatory, but I cannot tell you how many resumes I've seen with no contact info, and they were qualified for the job. That's crazy, right? And so make sure that you are putting an up-to-date phone number and an up-to-date email, because going back to what John said, a lot of us have not updated our resumes in 5 years or longer, and we may have gotten a new phone number, or we may have run out of space in that old email and switched to a new email, right? And so you want to make sure that it's updated with that correct contact info. Also with that, you want to make sure that that email is professional. And I would recommend to not use your company or agency email. I see a lot of people doing that as well. And it's not anything inherently wrong with that, but it does kind of leave this implication of, well, so I'm going to be I'm going to be talking with you through another company's email server about a potential job. I mean, that it kind of doesn't look good, because it's going to think to the hiring manager, like, are they going to do this when they get this job? So So I would just use your own your own personal email address and put your name in there. Again, you want to treat this like brand recognition. Like you want them to just keep seeing your name, keep seeing your name, keep seeing your name. And so put your name in there, and make sure that it's on the resume. You want, again, to have those clear and defined sections, especially if the qualifications call for experience and education. You want to have clear and defined sections of where that lies and how they and you want the hiring manager to be able to go straight to that section and match those experiences or match those qualifications. Because I will say too, a lot of times hiring managers, it is kind of like a checklist, especially that first go around. They will literally have like the job description there. At least I know this is true for a lot of like federal agencies. They will literally have like the job description there, like the standards for the job, and they'll be going through your resume, just cross-checking, cross-referencing. And if you don't have all those qualifications, then you get put to the side. And so make it easier on the hiring manager to have those clear defined sections. You may even want to have similar sections as to what's in the job advertisement. So if the job advertisement has duties, qualifications, again, you want to look at if those qualifications are education, you want to have a clear defined education section. If the qualifications are proficiency in some kind of training or certification, you want to have a certification section and have that in there. So again, they can just easily boom, 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 right? Let's talk about the objective statement. So at the top of your resume, a lot of people will have an executive summary, an objective statement. A lot of people call it a lot of different things. I call it a qualification statement, and I call it that for this reason. Again, going back to the simple fact that you don't want to just have words on your resume. You want to have proof. Like that's what your resume should be, is proof that I can do this task, proof that I have accomplished this, proof that I have this skill, right? And so again, going to the importance of qualifications, you could very well, and I'm sure we've all been through this, you could very well meet all of the experience, all of the duties. You could do all those duties currently on your job, have been doing those duties for years, right? But to qualify for this job that you want, you need a master's degree. You don't have a master's degree. And so the hiring manager has read through all this, all your experience, and they're like, oh, I think I found my person. And then they get to the end of your resume and they didn't see how you qualified, right? And so your qualifications should be first and foremost, should be paramount in your resume, because at that point on, everything else is just icing on the cake. And so if you have the cake of I qualify for this position, right? Whether that be, like I said, education, certifications, training, instead of having a vague objective statement that says job seeker seeking challenging experience in da 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 da. I mean, that doesn't really mean anything to anybody, because yes, you're a job seeker seeking a job, like a lot of objective statements just kind of say that, like I'm seeking a job, and they just put this fluffy, flowery language in there of why they're seeking a job. How do you qualify for this job, right? And so make that statement, and use that real estate of that first section of your resume to say, instead of seeking challenging opportunity, you can say 20-year IT professional with proficiency in such and such software technology, and holds a master's degree in cybersecurity procedures, right? And so you put all that right up there to say, I fit this position. And then everything else from that on is just proof that you fit this position. And that goes into that detailed and relevant experience and including that in there. And so take your qualification statement, again, whatever thought that triggered, hey, I'm qualified for this position, put that in the qualification statement and then flesh that out in your listed duties and tasks under each job, right? And make it detailed. Again, don't just say, I answered phones. Say, I routinely conducted calls with customers, intently listening to their experiences and relaying those experiences to internal teams to resolve any customer complaints, resulting in a decrease in customer complaints and an increase in routine customers. That was a mouthful, but you can separate that out. But again, going back to that premise of you want to set yourself out. You want to set yourself apart. And the best way to do that is not just regurgitating back what the advertisement says, but indicating how you've grown from that and how the company has grown from you doing that. And so going back to that controversial issue of references, again, include them, don't include them. I understand that, it can be iffy for some people. And I also will say, going back to the scamming issue, I would not include references unless I was certain that that was an actual position, right? And so you want to be mindful of that. You also want to be mindful of, again, making sure those references are relevant, because it only really helps if they are relevant to the position. And so going back to that, having an intimate knowledge of the company's interworkings can be very beneficial, especially in this day and age, because let's be honest, a lot of businesses don't have the time or resources to train people how they used to. And so they're expecting for you to kind of come in there and go ahead and get to work. And let's be honest that every company, every agency does things their way. And so whereas you might be in, a particular industry, how the academics, I take for instance, biologists, how you may have a PhD in biology. You may know everything there is to know about a particular species and habitat, and you may very well be the expert for that, right? You go and you apply for NOAA or EPA, and coming to find out, you don't, how they operate, they're especially EPA, that's a regulatory agency. And so you aren't going to be really doing that much biology. You're really just going to be doing a lot of permitting and enforcing of permits. And so keep that in mind as well when you talk about that detailed and relevant experience, because again, going back to looking at those the job advertisement itself, although the title might be for a biologist or an archaeologist or one of those other ologists, a lot of times, especially in the government or for a large company, you're more so working as a regulator. And so it's more important, not that you know how to do the science behind those things. Like, you need to know how to do the science, yes, but you're more so going to be reviewing other people's science to make sure that they did it, not necessarily how it should be done academically, but how it should be done to that company's regulations and their standards, right? And so if you can, again, reinforce that you are cognizant of that through either a cover letter or through relevant references, that can really help, or even through your detailed experience. Because I know a lot of agencies, a lot of companies nowadays, will contract with each other. And so if you, have been working on a contract for that agency, you might, you should highlight that in your relevant experience. Because again, that is something else hiring managers want to see. Not only that you can do the job, but you can do the job how that company prescribes it, their standard operating procedures, right? And so let's get into just a few questions here. So, true or false? You should always include recent contact info on your resume. What do y'all think? Y'all think it's
This,
all stored in the
yeah, I
system?
can, this question came up several times in the attendee chat, and one person was saying, but don't you have to include your home address, on the resume? So it's a interest. So let me ask you this: while people are answering this question, how have you seen resumes change? Kind of the expectations around resumes change over the last, say 5 years, to pick a number, because it seems like the thinking has really evolved, like about length, about formatting, etc.
I will say, again, kind of how we use technology has really changed the resume and just the job market. So with there being more remote jobs out there, that is one of the reasons why I say you may not need your home address. I personally, I don't put my home address on a resume, and I don't advise my clients to do it unless the company or agency specifically asks for it, because really there's no reason for you to need to know my home address if I'm only applying for the job. And so that's why I recommend to not put it on there. And then it takes up space. It takes up a lot of space, especially at the top of the resume where you really need that real estate. Another way that resumes have changed, again, going to the length. People want to see, because nowadays a lot of companies aren't doing as many interviews as they used to do. People are still going through like rounds of interviews, yes, but even so, it's less than what it used to be. I'm seeing more and more jobs just hire people without interviews. And so I think that goes to, one, they don't really have the time and the resources to conduct those interviews, and two, people are submitting, or I think the culture behind resume writing is that people are putting more in their resumes. And so you don't need an interview necessarily to know that the person matches the job. And so, and then, like I said, a lot of times, a lot of agencies and companies just aren't doing as many interviews. And so that resume may be your only time to shine. And so going to the length of the resume, if you feel like you need the 3 to 5 pages to convey all your experience, then go for it. Now, for private sector, I will say try to keep it to the 3 pages. But me personally, most of my federal sector resumes are like 5 to 6 pages, right? Because they do need a lot more detail. And so, yeah, always include recent contact info, but make sure it's not too personalized, right? You don't want everybody in your business.
Okay, great. And by the way, someone put in the Q&A, some government agencies now request that you do not put any personal information on your resumes and to only use email addresses.
Yes, I'm telling you, particularly Department of Homeland Security, if your home address is on your email, they aren't even allowed to look at it. They have to immediately discard of it. So, and that's what I'm getting at. Like, it's for agencies that require, security clearances and stuff, like they cannot store that information. Like, so if you're submitting applications with your picture on it or any of that information, it's getting deleted before a hiring manager even sees it, unfortunately.
That's good information. All right, and here's the next one. What do you need to tailor your resume? And I'm just guessing that C is not the correct answer. But while people take that quiz, we do have one other question I'd like to ask.
Yes.
And that is, what are your thoughts on leaving dates off your resume?
Like dates of employment?
I think that's dates of employment. I think this has come up around ageism.
Yes. So dates of employment, and particularly, I think the concern particularly comes from like dates of graduation.
Yes.
And I'll put it like this. The dates of employment, yes, you need to put that on there, especially for federal jobs. You have to put that on there. You have to put on there the dates of employment, because they have to calculate the time that you spent in the position. You have to have at least 1 year of specialized experience, right? And so they do a whole lot of math to do that equation. But for private sector jobs, you also want to put month and year, and for that. For education, if the qualification is just simply that you have a degree, it's really I like to put it on there just to fully flesh out the resume, even if it's from a while ago, just to fully flesh out the resume. But I also, even if it's from a while ago, I like to put it on there because, especially if that person has a lot of experience, because it's like, I started here, right? And it tells that story of, I've started here, like, sure, I may be older, but I started here, and look at what I've done. Like, look at what I've accomplished. You holding a degree should never be anything that you're ashamed of. I'm telling you. And so I recommend to put it on there, but you don't have to put it on there, because the thing is, if they mandated that you have a degree, more than likely they're going to pull your transcripts, and they're going to see when you graduated anyway. So it doesn't matter to put it on there or not. But I do think it helps flesh out that full story of who you are and everything that you've developed professionally, and that you have 20 plus years of experience. I mean, that's nothing to be ashamed of.
Okay, good. Let's see. All right. Seems like people are paying attention. I tell you what, we only got a couple minutes left. Let me see. I think there's a couple short questions that you might be able to answer just very easily. Would it be acceptable to include a city and state for contact information? So email address, but city and state, not like street address.
Yes, always include the city and state, because that's going to go towards your salary, because a lot of people kind of again, going into the remote job realm, that's going to your salary is going to be adjusted based on your locale. So you should put your city and state. Yes.
All right. Do we have to include supervisor contact information for each job as well?
For a federal job, yes. For a federal job, yes. For a private sector job, I think it just kind of takes up space. So you don't necessarily need to include it. But as well, going back to that references and going back to the who you know, if you and that supervisor have a really good relationship, and they may be someone who's a known name or known in the industry, it wouldn't hurt.
Okay. What about salary information? Do you have to include salary information for each of those jobs? What's the thinking there?
This is always a really, really tricky one, because you may be someone who, like I said, you may be someone who is getting underpaid right now, and you want to get your fair compensation. And so do you put your true salary on there, or do you leave it off? For, again, going back to the difference between federal and private sector jobs. So for federal jobs, if you are a current federal employee, you have to put your GS level. So that is your salary. You have to put that on there. But for a private sector job, the only reason I would put that on there is if I'm making, close to or near or somewhere in the range of what the job is advertising. Or if I know a lot of jobs, unfortunately, nowadays don't put a salary range on there. So it might be good to put your salary on there, so you're going into negotiations with, this is the bare minimum that I will take. And if they discard your resume based on that, you didn't want their job anyway, right? So it may be good to put your salary on there so you can go ahead and start that negotiation process early.
Right. So I know we got to wrap up, but you want to do just a quick closing thought here?
I really appreciate you guys. This is so much fun. I'm really happy that we got to get through everything. I will say, if you have any more questions, these are my pages, my business pages. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, and I have a website as well. If you want to email me directly, that would just be info@govjobsguide.info.
Okay, great. And just a reminder, this slide deck is available in the console or in the main resource center, in the resource center, the main environment, so you can get that. All right, so let me just share just a few last closing thoughts to send you on your way. So first, thank you, Alex. That just wonderful. Really appreciate all your thoughts, all your insights. I know everyone appreciated that. I want to remind everyone, don't forget to fill out your CPE evaluation form so that you can get that credit. And if you haven't already, please head over to the exhibit hall. Check out all the amazing booths. They are filled with additional information and resources. Now, up next are the closing keynotes, which begin at 3 p.m. Eastern. And you can access that session through the conference hall in the main environment. So again, thank you all for being here. We'll see you in the next session. And again, thank you, Alex, so much.
Thank y'all. Have a great afternoon.